All right, welcome everybody to Empower Hour. I am very excited to be here with you for today's Empower Hour. We have a very special guest joining us today, one of our own IAWP faculty members, who I'm going to introduce to you shortly. But first, I want to do a quick introduction to what this call is all about, especially if this is your first time joining us for a live workshop. Special warm welcome to you. Today, we are here with Empower Hour. I'm Suzanne Monroe, and we're applying the 12 mindsets of an empowered coach, which is the mindset mastery we teach here at the IAWP to our coaches in training so that they can create big shifts in their life. It all starts with our mindset. And the purpose of this call is really to master your mindset by looking at one mindset at a time and then kind of diving in and beginning to apply it to your own life. And we do all this through our workshop style format. So during a workshop, we're not just talking heads or gurus up here on a stage. We're really here as guides to guide you through your own journey. So we'll check in with you, take little breaks throughout our workshop style call, ask you to actually consider what's coming up for you, some of the challenges that you have and questions you have so that you can start applying it right now during our time together and leave this call with some action steps. Keep in mind our workshops might be shared for educational purposes, both inside and outside the IAWP community. And what I want to do for those of you who are new to Empower Hour and the 12 mindsets, we're going to do a quick overview. And I'm going to just share my screen with you quickly here before we get too far along. And let me do that. And hopefully you can see my screen now. And we're here at Empower Hour, and Mindset Mastery is really what we're covering. And it's all about really taking a closer look at our lives, really what's holding us back from getting to where we really want to be. What is mindset exactly? I like to define it as your thoughts, behaviors, and ways of relating to the world that make you really think and act as you do. And I think what's interesting about mindset is that two people can have the exact same upbringing or experiences, but have completely different mindsets. And so our mindsets are developed, and yet they can be altered, they can change, they can shift, and we can grow. So mindset mastery is really essential for anybody who wants to become more empowered in their health and their life and with their own purpose. It's really essential for those who want to follow their passion in life and are becoming wellness coaches, because first of all, if you want to coach others to make shifts and new habits and changes in their mindset, you've got to be walking your talk, right? You can't teach what you don't know. And also on the same note, if you really want to follow your passion and create success and start a business and be out there in the world sharing a message, you have to master your mindset so that you aren't held back by your own limiting mindsets. So it's really kind of a two-way street. And to guide you on this journey, we've created the 12 Empowered Coaches Mindsets. These are the 12 mindsets that you can begin to consider as you start to shift your own thinking and being in the world. I posted a link in the chat for you to use for the Empowered Coaches Mindset Blueprint. And during this live workshop, we're going to be looking closer at these 12 mindsets, as well as, again, you have this blueprint here that's up on the screen. Today, we're focusing in on one specific mindset, the mindset of perspective. And I'm excited because we have a very special guest joining us to help us dive into this specific topic on this mindset of perspective. IAWP faculty member, Dr. Arthur Ciaramicoli. And he has taught several classes here at the IAWP, so you may recognize him if you've been a part of the community for a while. He's back today to walk us through an important yet really often undiscussed topic on diversity in our coaching practices and in our lives. Quick bio on Dr. C here before I turn the mic over to him. He's a licensed clinical psychologist. He's been treating clients for more than 35 years. He's a member of the American Psychological Association and the Massachusetts Psychological Association. He's currently in private practice. Dr. Ciaramicoli has been on the faculty of Harvard Medical School for several years. He's appeared on CNN, Fox News, other shows, and other media outlets like CNN, Comcast TV, New England Cable News, Good Morning America, The O'Reilly Report, countless other television and radio shows, sharing his important messages. He's also the author of several books. You may have heard of some of them if we talked about them in our curriculum. The Curse of the Capable, Performance Addiction, The Power of Empathy, The Stress Solution. But today we're diving into his newest book, The Triumph of Diversity. And I want to show you a picture of the cover up here on the screen. The Triumph of the Diversity is how to rejoice and benefit from the interconnectedness of mankind. We're going to tie that into today's workshop. And one more note on this, if you're looking to find out more about Dr. Arthur Ciaramicoli and his books, you can learn more at his website, balanceyoursuccess.com. So I'm excited to turn it back over now to Dr. C. Welcome to our call. Hello out there.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you very much. Nice to be talking with you again.
Yeah, it's so fun to have you back. I know everyone was very excited, and I can see that the call is just filling up here with people during the live workshop. I know a lot of people will be watching the recording as well. But let's dive in. First of all, congratulations on your new book. Before we started the recording, we were talking about why it's so important. I'm just so excited to be hearing from you again. And I know you're always exploring really the most important topics that we need to be thinking about. But what led you to writing a book on diversity this time?
Well, you know, I've been heartbroken, Suzanne, and very disturbed by the increase in prejudice and the increase in hate crimes in America. And in the last 2 years, almost everyone who comes into my office is asking me something about the political climate, the corporate climate. And I think as wellness practitioners, psychologists, mental health practitioners, we need to address this with people because the increase in anxiety is very significant. I mean, the increase in anti-Semitism is at an all-time high. Muslim hate crimes have increased 67% in the last 2 years. The discrimination against women in the workforce is at 42%. Some people indicate it's over 50%. So, and the gender equality, we were rated 28th in the United States by the World Health Organization at one point. Last year, we were ranked 51st. So there's discrimination on all levels, and I'm very, very disturbed by it because our people are coming to us wanting to know what to do with this anxiety. Why is there so much prejudice and hate in America? You know, we comprise 5% of the world, and yet we have 31% of mass shootings in the world. 5%, but we comprise 31% of mass shootings. So what's happened? People are coming to us for all kinds of different reasons, but the main reason is to be healthy, to be balanced, to be happy. But how can you be happy in this environment when you know that the color of your skin, or if you have a hijab on your head, that people are going to hate you automatically and they don't even know you? So, I mean, I see, and I would assume a lot of your students and practitioners as well, see people from different cultures, different religions. I interviewed people from all the major religions for this book and several educators and politicians because I wanted to hear what people are thinking in these different, you know, these different sections. And I had one of my Latino patients say to me, you know, if you're gay, Black, Jewish, the Americans don't want you here anymore. He said, I feel like we need to leave because we're just not accepted anymore. And a recent Kaiser Foundation poll found that Blacks and people of color, Hispanics, feel very insecure in this environment, more so this year and last year than they have in the last 25 years. So these are the kinds of anxieties that we're presented with, and what do we do about it?
Well, and this is, I mean, it's such an important topic. And what I just heard you saying, which is interesting, is one, you may be someone who feels that you're not accepted. But on the other hand, if you're a coach or a practitioner, even if maybe you don't feel that way, you may be working with people feeling that way. And finally, we're all just being impacted by this. So there's this level of stress and anxiety that whether we're verbalizing it or not, we're somehow all carrying and experiencing. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, you cannot be in this culture right now without being affected by this. I mean, the hate speech, the political pundits who criticize each other and talk in very negative terms. You know, I cite in the book research that indicates when you have leaders that speak this way publicly, it filters down. And who does it filter down most to? Young people. Young people. We need models. That's why we need wellness practitioners and other people we are the helping people. We're supposed to be the models. But when you're exposed to people in authority who talk like that, who are sadistic, who are blaming, it filters down to young people. There was a report this morning that bullying has increased in the schools. Why? Because kids turn on the TV and they hear this kind of rhetoric every night. So it almost seems like it's okay. We have become desensitized to prejudice. When leaders talk this way, we lose our sensitivity to the suffering of people. We don't realize what discrimination is doing. And it's profound right now. It's worse in our country than it's been in many, many, many years. So we are at the front. We're at the forefront. We need to be the model of people that are open to all people. And what allows us to be open? Empathy. because empathy allows us to see beyond the surface. We don't judge people by the car they drive or how much money they have or the color of their skin or what their religion is. We judge them by who they are. We have to value character more than image, more than what a person looks like. We have to see into the heart and soul of other human beings and tease out their potential, but not their potential to hurt, you know, their potential to do good. I mean, that's what wellness is all about.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting. I don't want to go too far off a tangent. This may be for another call, but, you know, I have a third grader, a son who's 8 going on 9. And, you know, as much as we try to protect him, like you said, from all these things that are happening out there in the media, with the messages that are out there, it doesn't matter. They go to school and then there's somehow they happen to know everything that's happening, and they're still talking about it. It really is impacting them. And it surprises me because I think back to when I was that age, there weren't the types of problems that we have today. So it's concerning, you know, to hear these things coming from such young people. But, you know, when we think about diversity, because I know that's, you know, so important and such a big topic, but what you're talking about here is really the opposite end of the spectrum, which is these prejudices. And I know you talk a lot about this. What is the origin of prejudice in our society? And then, of course, you know, where is this coming from? And then how do we get rid of it, or how do we lessen it?
Well, just one comment about kids in school. There are very credible studies that indicate that when children are in diverse environments, what happens? They feel safer, they feel less vulnerable, they're smarter, their cognitive skills increase, their strategic skills increase, and their creativity increases. That's what happens when kids are in environments of diversity. When you have no exposure to people who don't look like you, there's a kind of an anxiety that comes up for children. There's an anxiety that comes up with adults. I have clients in the corporate world, they don't want to go to India. They don't want to work with the Chinese. They don't want to work with certain religious groups. I mean, we're in an international climate today, and so are kids. The grades K through 12, there are more children of color than there are white children in this country right now. So that's one thing. Diversity helps children, helps all children, because it reduces the fear when they see someone on the surface that doesn't look like them or doesn't practice the same religious beliefs. How does it come about prejudice? One very important factor is lack of familiarity. You know, I interviewed Christian Picciolini. He's the white supremacist. He was number 2 of the neo-Nazi white supremacists in this country in the 90s. And he did the Msnbc documentary for 3 Sundays on white supremacy. And he tries to bring kids out of these groups. But when he was 14, he was recruited into one of these groups. He didn't have much of a relationship with his dad, and he was recruited by the person who was the head of the neo-Nazi white supremacist organization in America. Bought him dinner, gave him money, gave him a car, and you know the story. This is how cults begin. But what happened when he actually opened a music store in Chicago, and he was selling white supremacist neo-Nazi music and literature. And one by one, people of interfaith groups came in to talk to him. They knew he liked dogs. So a black man came in and started to talk to him, and he liked the golden retriever that the man had. And then after talking to him for a while, the man left the store. He realized, well, you know, black people aren't so bad. And then a Jewish man came in, the same thing happened. 2 gay men came in, the same thing happened. He realized that they were hating people that they hardly even knew. They didn't even have any experience. The first story I tell in this book is about a man from the Midwest. You're a part of the country, so you're responsible for this. No, I'm kidding. Who came in and told me he was so glad that he was seeing me because when he was you know, in Michigan, he had a Jewish psychologist, and he said I didn't feel comfortable with him. And I said, well, how come you didn't feel comfortable with him? He goes, I don't know. I just, you know, I'm so glad you're Christian. I said, how do you know I'm Christian? He said, well, your last name, you got to be Christian. I said, didn't you know that there are 48,000 Italian Jews in Italy right now? And he said, oh my God, you're Jewish? I said, I didn't say what I am. But all of a sudden, that moment, we had this interchange where he didn't feel comfortable anymore. I said, 10 minutes ago, you felt very comfortable. Now, these last 5 minutes, you feel uncomfortable. I won't spoil the story, but we went on to have a relationship for 18 months. And today he is a non-prejudiced man, but it came out of ignorance and lack of familiarity. not knowing. He said to me, well, how can you be a Jew? They don't realize that Jesus was the Messiah. I said, in the scripture in Judaism, the Messiah is supposed to make the world at peace. There's going to be peace everywhere. Is there peace everywhere? No. So how can they believe that Jesus was the Messiah? You know, I educated him on the facts. And after he was digesting the facts session after session, he began to become more open. The last session we had, he said to me, you know, I have a home office. And he said to me, I come here every week and I never see your wife and kids. Where are they? I said, what makes you think I have a wife and kids? He said, oh my God, now you're an Italian Jewish gay man? And I said, does that matter? And he said, no, I'm past that. You know, we got past that. How did we get past that? The empathic connection. One human being to another, and empathy bridged the gap. And as empathy bridges the gap, people are more likely to explore the facts, not the prejudices and distortions they grew up with, because we all have grown up with prejudices toward ourselves and others. The work is to unravel, to unlearn. You know, anything that's learned can be unlearned. Prejudice is learned toward ourselves, that negative self-talk, or toward others. It's learned. We weren't born that way.
You know, it's interesting because right before the call, I just did a quick definition Google search on the word prejudice. What is the actual definition? Well, and I do this before a lot of the calls, so people are laughing. This is opinion not based on actual experience. That's what it comes down to. Okay, so, you know, we don't have the experience, but we just have these beliefs and thoughts and opinions. They're kind of like, feel like they're a part of who we are. We think they're right, but they aren't based on experience. So what I hear you saying is, in these examples, is that these people got experiences, and that's what kind of shifted their mindset of perspective, as you will. How do we go about kind of making ourselves have those experiences? And if we don't, what is it really costing us?
Well, prejudice causes tension. Tension causes the release of the stress hormone cortisol. You and I have talked about this before. Cortisol is probably the worst hormone that you can have in your body in excess amounts. So when you can only relate to the people in your choir, or your religious group, or your part of your community, and you have to block out other people, you're going to encounter them anyway. How can you be a practitioner and not encounter people of diversity? You don't know who's coming to your office. I call you up and I make an appointment and you come in. You don't know. I don't tell you what religion I am. I don't tell you where I came from. I may not even tell you what country I came from, or what part of this country I came from, because this country has many different cultures and different ways of looking at things. The South is different than the North, and so forth. So we have to be open to whoever we're seeing, and seeing them afresh, not based on how they look. But we have to know too, we all carry these prejudices into every encounter. You know, Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, you know, he said, when you blink, you make a decision. One time when I was working in a hospital, I had a one-way mirror where a group of people, we could see that other group on the other side, but they couldn't see us. So I asked this side, this group, to make decisions about who are those people on the other side. And the people said, oh, I don't know. I can't say that. You know, after they felt comfortable, they were writing books about these people. He must be from a wealthy background. He's a blue collar guy. This one's an accountant. That one's a lawyer. I bet she cheats on her husband. I can tell the way she looked, and she's flirting with that man. All kinds of things. 99% of it was untrue. I did it to show that as soon as we encounter someone, our brain is recalling memories. So I look at you, and if you look like the girl who rejected me in high school, I may feel a little uncomfortable, even though I have no idea why. And I say, you know, that's Suzanne Monroe. I don't really want to talk to her anymore. And people say, how come? Well, I don't know. I just don't want to. Just like that man said he didn't want a Jewish psychologist. He didn't know why until it was explored and unraveled.
I love that. Like, we didn't know why until it was explored and unraveled. So almost like there's a sense of accountability that it's, you know, we can't necessarily blame ourselves. We've had these thoughts or beliefs, but it's a step about being accountable, saying, why do I have these, and being willing to explore versus kind of operating unconsciously. Then we never really know why we think certain things about people or have perceptions.
Yes. And the most important thing as a practitioner, as a wellness practitioner, or any practitioner for that matter, if we don't know ourselves and our own prejudices, we have blind spots. And if I don't know myself well, you don't know yourself well, and honestly have looked into who you are and got feedback from other people and taken it in, then you have prejudice and blind spots in how you see other people. So I can't totally help you if I don't realize that I know you look like that girl who rejected me in high school. You know, and I can smile to myself because I have awareness. So then I can put it aside. What if I don't have awareness? Then you're going to pick up my tension because I'm not comfortable with you. You know, in my training in graduate school, they would always say, how do you feel sitting with that person? And I thought the question was kind of like, what does that matter? But then I realized later, I felt different sitting with different people. You know, because they evoke different things in me. And as we see what people evoke in us, we become calmer as we discover what is the reaction I'm having. I don't even know you. Sometimes I do, when I have a new client, I'll look out the window as they're walking in and I already have a reaction. I smile to myself. I don't even know who the person is, but I can, you know, we go by appearance. We make it, you know, there's some familiarity in my brain, and then we have to put it aside. When people start talking about their religious background or what part of the country they grew up in, or, you know, say I just went through a divorce and you come in and you're talking about going through a divorce, and I am angry with my wife because I think she betrayed me and so forth, and I'm half listening to you because you kind of look like her. Well, I'm in trouble, right? Because I'm not really seeing you as a person. That's where the generalizing comes. Prejudice comes from generalizing. So you look like my ex-wife or ex-wife to be, so all women are this, all men are that. When emotion takes over and people react quickly, it's usually from things that are unworked out from the past. Empathy slows everything down so we can sort of see you're a different human being than that human being. All people from the Midwest aren't the same. All black people aren't the same. One of the black journalists said the other night, what he finds funny in this political race is when they talk about the black sector, he said it's as if we're all the same. You know, he said the black sector, do you know blacks vote differently? We don't all vote the same. We actually don't even all think the same. You know, but he said he finds it interesting they talk about the black sector. Well, and we could say the Jewish sector or the Christian sector, but there's uniqueness within all of those. We have to know ourselves so that we're open to knowing other people, but our own biases interfere, and they interfere in listening. And people know when we're not listening. That's one of the reasons they don't come back.
You know, this is all, it's just so timely, so important. And the funny thing is when we first got in touch about doing this interview and you told me this was the topic, I have to admit, I paused and I said, what does this really have to do with being a holistic wellness coach? What does diversity, is it really, you know, what does this have to do with, you know, growing our coaching business? So just playing devil's advocate here, I think you've already pretty much laid the table on that one. Is there any more you want to say? Because I was going to ask you, what does this have to do with it? I think it's getting pretty clear, though.
Well, just that we meet people, every human being we meet, every person that comes into your office is different and has different experiences and different history. They touch on different things of the practitioner. We have to be aware of our own biases. Sometimes our own biases is what interferes with listening. For instance, in one of my leadership groups, one of the fellas is very intimidated by one of the other fellas who went to MIT at 16. And we were kind of teasing this out the other night. And he said, well, you know, I just, you know, you must be very bright. And he was doubting his own intelligence. But what if he was a wellness practitioner? And what if that MIT client came in and said, oh yeah, I went to MIT at 16 and then I got a PhD at Harvard in electrical engineering. Now I know my client would feel insecure because he went to night school, he finally got a college degree. Interestingly, he's far more successful than the fellow from MIT, but those image things really set him off. He went to a state school. He didn't go to a prestigious private school. That's just one bias. See, but that's his own. But say he's the practitioner and someone comes in from one of those affluent, highly rated colleges. Am I going to stop listening? Am I going to feel uncomfortable because he's brighter than I am? Or am I going to actually get to know him? Because he's not here to test IQs. He's here because he must be unbalanced in some way. So whatever sensitivities we have get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens if we don't know them and we haven't even explored them? We haven't even taken the time to explore them. Then we're in trouble. But because the likelihood of us being biased in our feedback is very high.
Well, I love that you're pointing out that we all have biases. And I think it's also important because we might say, oh, I don't have a bias against people of color or of this religion, but I love how you're kind of bringing in, it could be anything. It could be what you think about this person's economic status compared to yours. I mean, it can be so many different areas. And the fact is really just admitting that we do have biases. I want to pause before we go further doing our workshop style here. And I want to kind of connect with all of you guys out there and just see what's coming up for you as you're hearing this topic. And also, one of the things we like to do is rate our mindset. And we start out by rating, we're talking about the mindset of perspective today, if you're just joining us. Take a minute right now as you think about your own mindset of perspective, which is, you know, as you're, even when we're working with clients or just talking with family members or friends or people you encounter, you know, biases that come up, how in tune with you are that? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is like, yep, I'm totally aware of this, or gosh, I hadn't really thought about it till today. Maybe that's a 1. Give yourself a little rating if you want, or make any comments right now in the chat. Let's just get a little touch in from the audience out there, you guys, and hear what's coming up for you on that. I'm going to go ahead and say, you know, I think I'm really about a 6. I'm aware that when I see or encounter people, I do tend to make my own perceptions. The good news is I'm aware and then I try to do something about it, but I do notice that it's easy to be like, oh, to kind of make assumptions about people based on things that they're saying or how they look or whatever. And I do think there's some natural tendencies to do that, as you've been saying, but it's really more, what can we do about it? So Doc Rackman is saying 10, very aware. That's awesome. Lisa is a 9. No one is perfect. Gary's an 8. Kristen's an 8. Melanie's a 7. Awesome, guys, you're doing better than me out there. I'm glad to see that. Well, and you know, and sometimes this is just, you know, it's kind of coming up. You're thinking about it. I think there's always room for improvement. She's saying Esther's an 8, Yumi's a 6 or a 7. Swapna says she's aware and noticed people around her already who already know more than strangers. Sue is a disability coordinator and diversity champion, so she's been really open-minded. She's more of a 7 or 8. Ben is a 7, working on it. Well, thanks for sharing, you guys. It's kind of fun to just do a little check-in with ourselves. And maybe by the end of this call, we'll have moved that dial just a little bit more, right? Dr. C, you know, so this empowered mindset of perspective that, you know, is kind of part of our framework is really, we are asking this question, you know, is it our own perspective, or is it a reality, or is it the truth? And how this plays out, as you've been talking about, it can play out in our own perception of ourselves, how we perceive others, the actions we do or don't take. But how do our perceptions and our own blocks with diversity, do you think, how do they impact, we've been talking about how it impacts us as coaches, but how does it impact our coaching process and our practice as we're actually working face-to-face with people and interacting with groups of people?
Well, as I said before, one of the prime consequences of having biases that you have not resolved is you lose attention. You're not paying attention as you could. You're not fully present. And in order to be highly empathic, you have to be fully present. So, as I said, we all have biases, but you have to know what they are. I mean, that's why a group process is so important. In my leadership and communication groups, people come in from different countries, we have different races, and you see the perceptions in the beginning that people have, and then ultimately they change over time because people realize, even on subtle levels, who they start to distance themselves from or who they feel more closer to in the beginning, because there's some familiarity there. You know, and when you have clients that you feel more like are more like you, you're more likely to feel comfortable. But what if they don't seem like you? You know, the Gordon Allport, the noted Yale psychologist many years ago, said, you know, if you really know how to use empathy, you find out that we're all more similar than dissimilar, because you move past the surface. But we have to know ourselves and our own prejudices. I mean, my life's work is to help people reduce prejudice towards themselves and others, and to help people know that these are ways of thinking that are learned and they can be unlearned. Right now, we're bombarded with prejudice on the airways every day and through social media, and it is really having a profound influence on our health. But as practitioners, Again, we have to be very aware. We have to know what our biases are. We have to acknowledge. Sometimes in my group, I say, how many people have biases? Everybody raises their hand except one person. And I look at her and I say, so you have no biases? She goes, no, I have none. I said, really? I said, so Jack is African-American and Susan is Jewish and Rose comes from Spain, and you feel equally comfortable with the three of them? Absolutely. Now, you know that person has prejudices, but they can't acknowledge it, okay? And I know personally from meeting with her individually that she has a prejudice and she has an uncomfortableness with Black people. She's never been exposed to Black people. But she couldn't acknowledge it. So if she couldn't acknowledge it, that means that if that person is her client, what happens? He's going to sense that she's uncomfortable. And she's not going to listen to him as attentively as she could, unless she finds out how come she's uncomfortable. That's why in our schools, with kids that are growing up in diverse environments, they don't have the same uncomfortableness. Our daughter is a kindergarten teacher, and she will tell you, she has, out of 22 kids, 13 kids are from other countries right now, out of 22. And she said, if you see them in kindergarten in the playground, they all play with each other. They don't know that they're different yet. The boys hold hands just like the girls do. The empathy is pretty much the same among them, even across genders. She said, but as they get into 3rd and 4th grade, you start to see a separation. The Indian kids sit with the Indian kids, the Black kids sit with the Black kids, the white kids sit with the white kids, and you see the integration isn't taking place, and it's mainly because of the parents. I have a Muslim person who I interviewed his son and himself in this book, and actually there's 2 videos in this book of this young boy. His parents are from India. He was born here, but he's Muslim. And at 14 and 16, he did a PBS talk about people making fun of his name. His name is Furqan, and they would call him Furqan. And I asked him, I said, well, do you get angry with people when he said, no, our religion, we're taught to educate, not be angry. See, this is a family that they've taught their children to try to go out in the world and accept diversity. But the boy's father told me, he said, one of the difficulties in the Indian population, as I say, and he speaks quite a bit in terms of trying to get people to be more open. And he said that, he said to his Indian colleagues that you want their money, but you don't want their people. And that stayed in my mind for a long time that he made that comment. You want their money, but you don't want their people, meaning you're only staying with other Indian people. I have a client who's very successful in the restaurant business. He's Brazilian, but he's very upset with most of his extended family. They live in a part of a town near me, and it's all Brazilian. They watch Brazilian TV, but they have little interest in interacting with the white population. And the white population in that town has little interest in interacting with Brazilians. So you see, it becomes more divided depending on the heads, how they're being taught. But then people come to us and we have to help them unlearn some of these assumptions that they're making that are incorrect.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you talk about all this, I'm like, yeah, this makes sense as we're relating with others in our community and in our culture. But, I want to take this kind of to just another level with this as we think about our community here of wellness coaches and training. One of the things we talk about is, getting around like-minded people. And you said we feel more comfortable when we're around people we're like. But when it comes to, for example, coaches who have this newfound passion, right? They found their inspiration in holistic health and wellness. They're going on this path oftentimes of entrepreneurship or going out and sharing a message. And sometimes they start to feel a little bit like no one really understands them, maybe people in their life. How do we tie this into this? How do they balance kind of their newfound beliefs and passions and viewpoints and wanting to be around like-minded people who are kind of going on the same path with them, with maybe others who don't really get what they're up to or get what they're doing? I mean, some people feel they have to kind of separate themselves so they feel it can be negative almost to keep connected to those who aren't on the same path. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a very important question because I think a lot of students go through this. And look, I love being around high-spirited people who are open, okay? But in my practice and in my life and in my work and consulting, that's not always the case, right? So one thing is, don't try to convert people. You know, don't try to preach to them. This is like the ex-smoker who talks to the person who's smoking, and you can't stop talking about how you should stop smoking. People don't respond to that very much. In fact, it creates resistance. Listen, tease out the way they believe that may be different than you, and then ascertain the facts. There's a new way of looking at this. It's called deliberate polling. It's actually caught a lot of interest in Europe and now in the United States as well. What is deliberate polling? They take people together, bring people together from different points of view, like diehard Democrats and diehard Republicans, and they bring in experts from various fields. Like, say someone has some distorted beliefs about wellness or distorted beliefs about climate change. They bring in an expert, and you give them literature and they read it, and then you have a discussion based on facts. Empathy is fact-oriented. What they found is, after 2 days of this, 70% of people change their minds because they're now exposed to the truth. So when we have, you know, obviously if I'm talking to another psychologist, we have maybe we understand a certain language differently, and he may be more focused on health, or she, than a lot of other people. But I'm not helping people if I try to convert them and get them to think the way I think. I have to listen to what's the way they think. How come you think that way? Look, most people in America know what to do to be healthy. It's not a secret. We're the most educated country in the world, and yet we have the lowest rates of health in the world, in the civilized world. Highest rates of adult diabetes, highest rates of childhood diabetes, highest rates of obesity, heart disease, on and on and on. Why? It's not because they just don't get the facts. They don't know what is the resistance to taking care of themselves. That's where you tease it out. But if I come in and start preaching to you, and I talk more than you do, you're not coming back. You might come back a few times, but you know, I'm just lecturing you. I have to connect with you. Suzanne, how come? You know, I'm trying to really understand. No judgment. I'm just trying to understand. So at night around 10 o'clock, you take out the ice cream, right? And every night you do that when your husband goes to bed, and you sneak it. And then those nips that you have, you keep those in your pocketbook, and you have a few of those. And you were just telling me that you're not sleeping well and you want to lose weight because you're overweight. But you're digesting straight alcohol, and you're eating a half a pint of ice cream, and then some potato chips and Doritos in there too, probably. Yeah. Okay. Well, now you're making me feel bad. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just trying to understand, what's it doing for you? What happens before you make that choice, those food choices? What kind of thoughts are you having? Oh, I don't know. Oh, well, let's slow it down and find out what kind of thoughts you're having. You're teasing out the way that person perceives and think, not just giving them the way I think. It's easy for me not to eat that way. I don't eat that way. But it's hard for that person. They want you to know what they go through, and you're trying to bring them back in sequence to understand what they go through. Let me tell you something. You didn't buy nips at a package store, and you're eating a half a pint of ice cream with Doritos for no good reason. You're trying to stimulate dopamine, the pleasure center of the brain. Are you not feeling happy before you make those choices? On the way home, when you stop in a package store to get those nips and hide them in your pocketbook? There's something you're feeling about going home or where you came from. You're uncovering more of the way they think, the way they feel, the way they perceive, and you're making them aware of what they're not aware of. Most unhealthy behavior is unthinking behavior. They're not really thinking about what they're doing. They just, every night you go to a package store, you get 2 nips, you make sure you have the ice cream and the potato chips, and I wait for you to go to bed. And I can't wait.
This is so huge what you're saying. And this is kind of interesting, Dr. C, you may not have noticed this, but a lot of people's heads are down right now as they're taking some notes, because what you're saying is very similar to how we teach the core coaching method, our coaching process here at the IAWP. Yet on the same note, we have to balance that. You know, we have this passion for holistic health and wellness, especially when you go on a journey. Maybe you experience your own healing, or you discover something new. Like, there's this desire to kind of shout it from the mountaintop, right? But on the other hand, we balance that with, you know, the core coaching method, which is really doing what you're saying. It's really digging into why someone is doing what they're doing. But it's something that, it's a skill that has to be learned. I hear just the years of experience that you have with that coming through. But the thing is, you know, you have this, you want to tell people kind of what to do, but you really have to balance it with finding out what's going on with them. And I think you said it perfectly, because just giving people tons of information and loading it on them isn't going to make them change. You're not going to understand really what's happening for them. So that really resonates. And I think for everyone in the community as well.
If you're doing a workshop, you give information. If you're giving a talk, you give information. But if it's one-to-one and we're trying to find out, how come you don't take care of yourself? Then you have to go you have to go deeper. You have to tease out and help people become aware themselves. Because they often realize through that process that, oh, okay, now, right before I go into that liquor store, oh, I remember what Dr. C said, and why am I unhappy? I guess I'm not happy. What am I feeling? You know, that's where journaling comes in and other methods. It's become aware. What happens before I make the decision to not take care of myself?
Yeah, so we're talking about like how this shows up in your coaching practice. And we were also kind of talking about, okay, it doesn't mean you go out and ostracize others, maybe friends or family that now don't think like you. It's about still being curious for those people rather than trying to tell them what to do. But on the same note, I guess the question that's still coming through is, how do we keep that connection to people in our lives? Because I know this comes up a lot for coaches in our community. You know, they've made these big shifts and changes. They have this new awareness, right? And they want to surround themselves with like-minded people who can support them, you know, their own community, their own tribe. Yet maybe others in their lives are kind of going and walking a different path. Does this create separation? Does this tie into what you're talking about as far as prejudice? How do we stay inspired and connected and following a new path without feeling like we're separating ourselves from the rest of the world? Because I know in this field, and I'm guilty of it as well, it can be easier to kind of close yourself into your own little box when you see the world around you, you know, falling apart, as we talked about earlier, or you see everyone going kind of a totally different route and you're like, this, I got to kind of protect myself, is the sense that can come through sometimes.
That is, you know, such a critically important question, Suzanne. And it's so important because I think sometimes when we have newfound knowledge, we get a little high and we forget where we came from, okay? Because most of us got into this because we weren't so healthy, okay? So we were there once. So remember where you came from. And also, yes, is it a prejudice? Yes, because now you start to polarize. What's happening in this country that is so disturbing is we are polarizing. We're becoming us, them, black and white thinking. We're the good wellness people, they're the bad, unhealthy people, okay? Right. Our job is to tease out the potential of the unhealthy people to join the group. But if you act like you're a little bit above, or, you know, you're not part of the group because you're not doing what I'm doing, you're going to lose them. That person who came in and told me he didn't care for his Jewish psychologist, if I had said to him, what the hell's the matter with you? You're anti-Semitic? Would he come back? No. We had to uncover what made you feel uncomfortable. We had to go over some of the facts, some of the learning that he had that wasn't true, like with anybody. So, you know, I have a lot of relatives who aren't very healthy, okay? When I go to a wedding, because some of them drink too much, I just walk in and they're uncomfortable. I don't even say anything.
He's here again.
My cousin, the last wedding I went to, I walked down and said, oh, Jesus Christ, you're going to count every beer? I said, I haven't said anything. I just represent something. You know what I mean? It's not that I don't have a drink or a glass of wine, but my point is they know. You know, no one will say at a table, I don't have time to exercise, because they know I exercise every day at 6 o'clock in the morning and they know I'm very busy. So we've had this conversation. So they don't say that. Yeah. They'll say it when I'm not there.
That's interesting. So on one level, I mean, it's about not ostracizing yourself, but people are going to know you're following a different path, and maybe it becomes inspiring for them, yet you're not acting all high and mighty. You're open to kind of having conversations with people, but yet some people are still going to be like, you're going that way.
But what you're showing is you sit down, you relate, you talk to them about some other things, you ease, and you change their brain chemistry. Empathy produces oxytocin, which is that near miracle neurotransmitter that makes people feel comfortable, safe, and they're open to being vulnerable. So then they lose that idea that you're being judgmental.
Okay, well, let's dive into empathy.
I'm sorry?
Well, I was just going to say, let's dive into empathy because you just mentioned it and we've talked a lot about it and you've taught us a little bit about empathy before and how important it is in the coaching process. But
yes.
Talk a little bit more about this. How does empathy relate to diversity and really the success of wellness coaches and what they can do and showing up in their practice in a new way?
Empathy is the heart of diversity because empathy allows us to see beyond the surface. Empathy is the capacity to understand and respond to the unique experiences of another. It is the most important capacity for successful professional and personal life. If you don't have empathy, you're not going to connect very deeply with friends or a person you live with or your children. So empathy is critically important to a wellness practitioner, but it's critically important to every human being if you want to be successful, happy, and healthy. It is critically important to uncovering prejudices towards self and others and restoring a clear vision. So
now, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I know we're not, we dug into empathy before, but for those who maybe missed that or need a quick review, like what is kind of the if there was one thing you could say that coaches could do to kind of begin practicing more empathy to help bring forth this diversity and awareness in their practice, what would you say that is?
Well, it ties into all of what you've been asking, really, because say those people who aren't into wellness, when you have empathy, they're going to you're trying to understand their perspective. And when you're trying to understand their perspective, remember, empathy causes a brain change. It causes people to feel more comfortable. When people feel more comfortable, they talk more, they reveal more, and there's more to work with. When you have biases toward other people, and especially unconscious biases, you don't even know you have them, they feel it because our nervous systems talk to each other. Let's just say I don't really care for people from the Midwest. If that was really incorporated in my psyche, we would not have the same conversation. Even if I was not cleanly aware of it, it's like the guy with the Jewish psychologist. I would be a little, people, you distance yourself, but you would feel it. You would know it. People know it. We have a remote control in our hands, and we're controlling each other's brain chemistry. Empathy relaxes. If you don't have an empathic rapport with people, they're not going to open up to you, and they're not going to feel understood and heard.
Our nervous systems talk to each other. I just have to repeat what you said there for everybody. Go ahead.
There was a long-term study at Harvard Business School and Stanford Business School years ago, and they were trying to find out why don't MBAs from these prestigious programs succeed in the corporate world. So they went out and interviewed people from over 500 corporations. Do you know the one thing that they found out in the end? She or he doesn't make me feel understood or heard. So you get these people coming from these prestigious programs, but yet they didn't know how to relate empathically.
So let me ask you this. This is all very interesting. This empathy piece is such a huge part to this. Does developing empathy as well as kind of bringing more diversity into our lives, does it kind of change who we are? Does it make us even happier people? Does it make us different in some way? Do we change literally if we start practicing this?
Yes. Michigan State did a long-term study, and they showed, it was an international study, and showed that empathic countries have the highest rates of agreeableness, pro-social behavior, acceptance, lack of prejudice, productivity. So empathic countries were at the highest in terms of happiness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and productivity. It's the same for empathic environments. It's the same for an empathic practitioner. That's why people in the helping professions who have a lot of knowledge, but they're terrible practitioners, because you just can't recite knowledge and connect with people. It's not enough. I was in graduate school with people who could probably take IQ tests and score higher than most of the people in the room, but certain people were dense emotionally. So this is a very valuable tool, and we know that it not only is very valuable in terms of individual one-on-one interactions, but we're in a time in our society where we're faced with overt prejudice, the highest it's been in years and years. Hate crimes, mass shootings. People don't want to come here anymore. I was on vacation. I met a woman from Argentina and her husband, who was an attorney. And I don't want to get political, but they said, she said to me after 2 or 3 days, she said, we want to ask you a question. Are you a Trumper? I said, I don't want to get into a political discussion. I'm not a fan of who he is. And she said, well, give him a message for us. We don't want to come. You see, that's the lack of understanding that they're feeling, like we're not accepted. Like my Latino client who said, if you're Black, a person of color, gay, you're not wanted in America. That's the feeling people are having. I don't believe that's most of Americans feeling that way, but there is a feeling in America right now that that's the case. It's us, them. We're not uniting, we're ostracizing. And as wellness practitioners, you may not think that you're dealing with this every day, but I guarantee you are.
Well, I think that brings up an important point, because now as you relate this story, I'm almost kind of cringing. I'm like, can't we just keep personal matters out of it? Like when we're in our coaching practice, like you said, we don't want to necessarily get into politics with somebody, but somebody else might be really kind of wanting to know what our stand is on something. I mean, how do we actually show up for our clients when we have these different beliefs and viewpoints? I mean, should we just keep personal matters out of it? Like, what's really the protocol here? Do we have to be on the same page? No, but do we have to even have a conversation about anything?
I've been doing this work for many years, and I've never in my career had so many people. Almost every day somebody mentions something about politics. Should I be sharing what my political viewpoints are? I don't do that. What I do is, if you say you want to vote for Joe Biden, you want to talk about that, or you want to vote for Trump, or you want to vote for Elizabeth Warren or whoever, I say, oh, well, how come? How come? How come you want to marry Jack Smith? How come you want to go work for Genzyme? How come? It's the same process. Let me understand your thinking. Oh, well, she said blah, 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 blah. Well, so all Mexican people are misogynists and rapists? Okay, so that's what you believe. And I can say it in a neutral way. Well, not when you say it that way. I said, but you just said it. I'm just repeating what you just said.
The fact that you can say these things in a neutral way and do this obviously comes with some experience. So I know for many of our coaches just listening, they're just getting started on this journey, maybe just taking on their first clients. And this is so huge to know that this is possible for you with practice, to kind of slow down and reflect. And it really does all come back to being curious, which is really at the heart of what our coach training program is about when we think about our coaching method, right? We're being curious. But you know what I love about what you're saying, Dr. C, as I think about this is we really have an opportunity. And I think this brings back to maybe why you wanted to be here today. We have an opportunity as practitioners and coaches to show up differently, but we even have a platform and a way to practice this in our lives that maybe other people don't have. We can go out and work with our clients and start practice being curious about others, which can change our own mindset, really. And just by doing that, we've made huge strides, and then we can go out and do it in our own life. A lot of people aren't on this call, don't have this opportunity to even be thinking how they can show up for others. But this field really gives such an amazing opportunity to do that.
It is an amazing opportunity because, we all have to remember that people are coming to us to feel better. They want to be healthier. We have to help expand their empathic range so they can incorporate diversity into their lives. And when you do that, you're helping them. You're making them happier. When people come in and they say, I can't sleep at night because I was watching CNN or Msnbc or Fox News all night, that's what they want to talk about. They can't sleep because they're so disturbed by it. What am I going to say? Don't talk about that? Well, let's talk about your weight. That's why you came here? No, they want to talk about that. Okay, let's talk about it. What about it? What makes you watch Fox News or MSNBC till 1 o'clock in the morning and then you think you're going to go to sleep? I'm just trying to understand this.
Okay,
and they laugh like you're laughing. Yeah, but I can't turn it off. How come you can't turn it off? Let me try to understand how you stay up till 1 o'clock and you get up at 6. Well, what time do you go to bed? 10. You get up at 6? Yes. When do you stop watching the news? At 9. I get enough that I know what's going on. It's too disturbing. Do I want to know what's going on? Yeah, I read. I read a lot in the morning. I keep up with things. But I'm trying to, what is, if that's upsetting you so much, now you're sleep deprived. If you're sleep deprived, it affects your metabolism. If it affects your metabolism, you're going to crave sugary sweet substances. You're going to gain weight. That's one of the things that cortisol does that most weight programs don't talk about. It increases fat cells and increases the desire for sugary sweet substances. And sleep deprivation does that. And we know we're a country of thousands, if not millions of people who are sleep deprived. And people are watching more news now than ever. That's a fact. So if you come in and want to talk about that, I've got to address it, right? But I want to understand it.
So this kind of ties into this, okay? Because what you're saying is, you have some limits. You want to be aware, but you're going to turn it off because you're taking care of your own self. Your cortisol is not going to be affected by everything that's going around you. On the other end of the spectrum, I'm someone who's like, I feel very sensitive to all of the information. So I'll even kind of maybe go too far where it could block me from really being aware. How much awareness do we have before it does start impacting our health? Our group of coaches here, many of them are highly sensitive people, right? These types of things can create stress in our own lives, kind of create us to go out of balance, raise our cortisol. Like, should we even be watching anything at all? But then if we're not, are we really open to diversity and what's going on in the world around us? But, I kind of want to live in my pink bubble, Dr. C. Is that an option or not?
We have to pay attention to the news. We have to read. And because we have to be aware, because people present us with what's going on in our country, and we have to be able to deal with that. So that's true. But remember, empathy teaches us when to move in and when to move out. Empathy is an objective tool to read not only yourself, but other people in situations. I could stay up. I go to bed. I don't go to bed because I want to go to bed because I'm too stimulated. I go to bed because I know if I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock and exercise, I got to go to bed. And if I'm going to be the best I can be for every one of my clients, I've got to go to bed, get enough sleep, and I've got to exercise in the morning, because if I don't, I'm just not as cognitively aware. I know that. So I owe that to people. I owe that to my family. So I know, okay, I can watch it and on occasion I'll stay up later, maybe, but very seldom, because I know that's my commitment. That's my job. And that's my commitment to the people who are close to me. So empathy, if you're aware, you can see you are tired. What is it you're watching now that you can't pick up in the morning? Like I have a Peloton, so I do spinning classes in the morning. Tomorrow, because I want to hear all of what happened, I'm gonna get on it and I'm gonna do like a scene thing. I'm not gonna do a class, but I'm gonna be listening to the news because I'm changing the stations, because I want to hear what's happened. But it's not going to interfere with my health. But if it's interfering with your health, I'm curious as to know how come. How come you're not taking in your own cues? The human body gets tired between 10 and 11 o'clock. If you push it beyond that, you'll get a second wind, and then it will disrupt sleep. Scientific fact, all the sleep researchers say this. Okay. Do you not want to have insomnia, or you want to have insomnia? What do you want to do? Well, I want to stay up and I want to, okay. So you're going to be tired and you're going to be eating the wrong things tomorrow. Okay, I can accept that. Can you accept that? Because it's the non-judgmental part of it that makes people keep talking to you. I'm not criticizing you because you're doing it. I'm trying to understand. You are sitting in that chair. You do want my help, I think, right? Okay. So you're going to go to bed the same time tonight, though. Well, it's Super Tuesday. Okay. So we know what tomorrow's going to be like. Well, you don't know that for sure. Of course I do. You just told me that that's the way you're waking up every day. But it's your life.
So the questions help to bring awareness, right, about this interconnection between all these things that are happening. The person staying up late is going to affect their sleep. It's going to then affect their food choices. You know, this really relates to our Wellness 360 system that we teach our coaches in training here. It's our holistic philosophy that it basically looks at 12 elements of our life and how they're all interconnected, how the elements all impact one another. And bottom line, you can't just look at things in a box, right? One of those elements is relationships. And one of the most important layers of that is the relationship to self. And it really comes down to self-love and self-care, which is what you're suggesting in this case. And I know you talk about this too, because you think about prejudice. Self-hate is a type of prejudice in and of itself. How do wellness coaches help clients move from kind of this almost self-hate to really opening up to more self-care and self-love, in your opinion? It sounds like it starts with the self on one level. You have to kind of do it for your own health and wellness before you can somehow get out there and help others with it and change, you know, your perceptions.
Well, you know, I have a chapter in the book on self-talk because I think it's so critical, because negative self-talk, it starts the moment we wake up, and it can dominate the day, because it as soon as you remember, every statement we utter has a neurochemical correlate. So if I get up and I look in the mirror and I say, oh, I'm so ugly, I'm so old, I'm so this, I'm so that, you're already starting. So now I'm producing cortisol and I haven't even had breakfast yet. You know, I mean, you're setting up the whole day. So, you know, if you plan the night before, I am committed to not waking up that way. I'm going to try to move away from that typical self-talk. Everybody knows their typical record, and you have to be kind of stand outside yourself and grab that prejudice that you have. But I try to explain it as we write a novel about ourselves early in life, but it's a novel. It's a fiction book. We have to edit it and write a nonfiction book. That's our responsibility, I think, as adults, to edit it and rewrite it. And can we do it alone? No. We need feedback from other reasonable people who care for us. And when you take in that feedback, whether it's from friends or spouses or whoever, you start to rewrite the story. Because so many people grow up thinking they're this, that, or the other thing. I mean, you know, I have 2 doctorate degrees. I'm not complimenting myself, but I was the kid in high school at the guidance counselor said that I wasn't college material. You know what I mean? And here I am. Who knows how I got here? But, you know, so it's unlearning. A lot of health has to do not just focusing on what's wrong with us, but it's uncovering what's been right with us that we haven't seen. That's where prejudice lies. And if we're prejudiced within ourselves, even though we don't realize it, we project it outside. If I'm very critical of myself, the likelihood that I'm going to be critical of you if I become close to you is very high. If I'm too judgmental of myself, the likelihood that I'm going to be judgmental of you is very. Now, people often say, oh, I only do it to myself. And I kind of smile, you know, because the likelihood of projecting it out is very high. Maybe you don't do it to a stranger or somebody on a plane, but the people close to you, they're going to get that too. You know, I have a chapter on performance addiction in the book, because performance addicts are always trying to make themselves better, and they compare and contrast themselves and everybody in their lives with everybody else all the time, and they drive everybody crazy. But they'll say, oh, I only do it to me. No, you don't. You know, your kids know that. They come down the stairs and you say, oh, are you going to wear that top today? Oh, did you, honey, do you think a little something up here will make you look a little better? A little blush over here. Yeah. And what is the kid learning? Why can't I go to school without makeup? I'm in the 8th grade.
You're getting some comments. I love that. Just came to realize this yesterday. But really this piece about self-talk too, as you've been describing, is so important, because on one level, you're checking in with your own self-talk. What are you saying about yourself? But
Yes.
as you talk about your own prejudices, what are you saying about others? I mean, this awareness is really the big message I'm getting here as a first step for everybody, is what am I saying about myself? Because it starts with the self, right? And then
Yes.
and that leads to really what are my perceptions about those around me? I want to take a minute and just pop back to all of our coaches out there as you guys are taking in everything Dr. C has been sharing with us today. I know there's lots of comments out there and excitement. Just take a minute now to kind of connect with what's coming up for you. How can you bring about more diversity and empathy into your own life? It could be your own personal life right now. It could be with relationships. It could be with your coaching clients. What's kind of one thing that maybe is coming up for you that you learned today that you can take as a first step or a little shift that you want to make? Might be just listening to your own self-talk as a great first step. Might be being more curious about those around you, asking more questions about people instead of talking so much, right? Or, you know, showing up differently in your coaching practice. I'd love to hear from you guys what's coming up and what one little action step you might take from what you've learned so far today. You can just type it right there in the chat. Doree says, being careful about what she says about herself in front of her granddaughters. That's so huge, right? Mm-hmm. Not only for yourself, but for them. I love that. Swapna says, practicing empathy in her conversations. She wants to bring in more diversity. I love that. Sue says, even as a psychologist, doctorate graduate, she's thought about this, such a huge aha moment. Thanks, Dr. C. Jennifer says, from Dr. PC, sorry, Sue. Jennifer says, I didn't pay much attention to her biases. She's going to now. She's also working on self-talk. Kristen is definitely learning to listen more instead of trying to give all of the advice and solve everyone's problems right away. Tegan wants to reprioritize by asking more questions in friendships and relationships. Kimberly's read your book, Dr. C, The Stress Solution. Has really shifted the story she's been telling herself and learning different perspectives. So today's call was really helpful in solidifying all of this. And Ben says he has biases, so does anyone he speaks with, and he wants to listen more and look for truth and facts. I love it, guys. Such huge, powerful next steps that everybody's kind of connecting with here. And if you have any specific questions for Dr. C, you can type them in the chat right now. We have a little bit of time left for any other questions that are coming up. Dr. C, we've covered a lot of questions today. It's been fun. I think there's so many more questions I could ask you. I think if I could ask you one more question, I think I would bring it back to the community level, because here at the IAWP, we're a community. We support one another. We're on a mission to help other people change their lives, share the message of wellness. And as we've talked about all the different topics today with diversity and prejudice in our society in general, how it affects our own lives, our perspectives, how we interact with others, our coaching clients, or just in our relationships, let's kind of expand it to the community level. How do groups like ours, who come together as communities, it can be other communities that represents groups of people, interfaith communities, spiritual communities, in our case, this holistic wellness community, how do we go about being on a mission to reduce prejudice and making a difference and bigger impact in the world as a community, as a group? Love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think, you know, one of the things I've learned in writing this book is because I had so much contact with interfaith groups, and I was just so impressed with, you know, Sikhs and rabbis and ministers and priests and how they all come together, and Buddhists and some people who are practicing Taoism. They're so friendly with each other. And I think wellness just fits into their world so much. I mean, here in some of the interfaith communities, they have yoga and acupuncturists and massage therapists involved. And I just think it's a perfect fit because they are very focused on happiness and wellness. I just don't think they probably don't have the expertise that you and the practitioners in your group have. But I mean, that would be one idea, to try to connect with some interfaith groups. Go give a talk, you know, because they look for people to speak and to help them improve overall health. And it's a diverse group. It attracts people from all different walks of life and different religions. And I think from that perspective, it's very exciting because you're hearing different views. You know, if you get 10 people in a room from the same part of the country, 10 white 50-year-old men, the ideas are pretty similar. If you get a group of diverse people, you know, diverse people produce diverse ideas, and it expands our awareness and it enlivens our spirit because our world opens up. So, I mean, that's one possibility of connecting with interfaith groups.
You know, it's so interesting because as you say this, you know, one of the things we teach here is about finding your niche, right? Kind of your tribe or group of people that you really want to support. It's a specific group of people with a specific problem, which, as I say that, can sound very narrow. And sometimes it feels narrow for us. from a business standpoint, as we go out and share our message, it can be very powerful to impact a group of people. As I hear you saying, go out and speak to diverse communities, I want to share with everybody out there that I think there's an overlap between these two areas. Because as you think about specific people who have specific problems, they can be across many different cultures, religions, backgrounds, right? So that we can still have a niche audience, but we may find them in a lot of different communities in a lot of different places.
Yes.
I think it really opens up the possibility of where we can go out and share the message of wellness. So I'm just so glad you shared that.
I have a client who's a yoga instructor, and she has a small school, and I mean, her practice really took off with getting involved with the interfaith community, and she does workshops there. You know, people pay for her time and so forth, but it's such a large community that, I mean, they didn't have any exposure to yoga. So I definitely could see how that would bring in people from different walks of life, different religions. And again, they probably don't have exposure. They may not know. And it would be great if you're letting people know you're open to that. You know, you're open to helping people wherever, whoever. You're not going along with the trend in our society, which is only to help or be kind to certain kinds of people, that you're open to all people. Wellness is for all people.
Wellness is for all people.
Yeah.
I love it. And, you know, I'd love to just take a minute now. I'd love to hear from one person out there live who's been impacted by what Dr. C has had to say today. I know many of you shared next steps or things that have impacted you. Let's just take somebody live who wants to say hi to Dr. C and share with us kind of a little breakthrough that maybe you've had on this call, or you just got during this workshop. You know, something that's kind of opened your mind that you want to go out and do next. So all you have to do is kind of raise your hand if you're on video. I can see you out there. I would love to say hello. There's Kristen out there. Let's get a microphone. Hey, Kristen.
I'll go. Okay, so
Thank you.
I was just like really inspired by this call. I'm only 25 years old, so I feel like hearing all of this come to me like right now in this moment, which is like solidifying my thoughts always, because I always felt a little different than other people. With me being very open-minded, I've come from like tons of cultures. My mom's from Poland, my dad's from Ireland, so I have like all that background, but I also grew up in a very diverse community. So being so young and like seeing people around me just total opposite like mindset as me, and like there's a ton of racism. I see it every day, everywhere I go. I live in Chicago right now, and I'm a soul cycle instructor, and almost everybody in my classroom is like white, rich, uppity, and like I always open my classes to kind of doing, like last week I did a class where all of my funds were going to a group in Chicago called In Her Shoes. It's helping young girls have confidence in the workplace, things like that. Almost no one showed up to the class, and it was like so disheartening for me, because I was like, nobody here care. Like, why do I feel so young and I feel so stupid caring this much? So it was like amazing to hear everything today, that even though I am young and I'm like still growing, I want to spread like these messages, have other people around me learn, and just be open-minded and like have empathy, because I feel like in my like culture and people my age, there's no empathy, and it's like so disheartening. So yeah.
Well, you're not stupid. You're wise for persisting in this, and keep moving forward in that regard, because you never know when it's going to take, and when you're inviting people in, sooner or later 1 or 2 comes, and then 3 or 4, and then somebody tells somebody else, and then it starts. But you're also right about, we're at a time where empathy is at an all-time low and narcissism is an all-time high.
Yeah.
But you're a wellness practitioner, so you're going to change that. We're going to change that. I look at this as a movement. I look at this as a movement. This is the 10th book I've written, and I've never gotten so much interest in this book more than any other. And I think it's because people are experiencing this and need people like you who are open-minded and want to reach out to people in your age group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Thanks so much for sharing, Kristen. That's amazing. And I love what you've shared as well, Dr. C. It's like, this is a journey, right? It doesn't necessarily happen overnight. And we could get disappointed, we get frustrated when we try something and we don't get the response, but we're here as a part of a movement. We're here to make a difference, and we just keep moving forward. So this has been so inspiring, so exciting. Dr. C, talk to us. We got to go to Balance Your Success to get the book if we want to check in on that. Anything else about that?
Well, you can go to Amazon and get the book, and it's in paperback, and it's on the Amazon Kindle as well. So Amazon's selling it now. You can go to my website as well, but I think the website would just direct you to Amazon. So you probably, if people are interested, and if anyone does read the book, I'd love to hear your feedback.
Well, Dr. C, as our faculty member, is over in Wellness Professionals Thrive Mastermind. So let him know if you read The Triumph of Diversity, what questions more that you have coming up for him. Dr. C, is there any final comments or any closing words you want to leave us with today? Of course, I could chat your ear off, as I always say, forever. And of course, we've already gone way over the time I said it was going to be.
Well, I appreciate very much the opportunity, Suzanne, and to talk to the other practitioners. It's an honor for me because, you know, I know that you're all interested in helping people be healthier. And I just would hope that you keep in mind that we're in a very dangerous time right now. We're in a very biased, prejudicial time right now. And probably a lot of the people who come to you have this on their mind. So we want to try to be as open-minded as we can, as empathic as we can, because we have to change this trend in our society. And it can be changed. Most people are open-minded and have goodness in their hearts. And we need to counter the amount of prejudice and hate that we're experiencing right now.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really truly believe we are all change agents here, a part of a greater health and wellness movement. We're here to help change people's lives, and this is a big piece of the puzzle. So just so honored that you were here today with us, Dr. Ciaramicoli. Check out The Triumph of Diversity, and we'll hope to see you back for another class soon.
Okay,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.